I still hear and read in the motoring press so-called experts who state that EVs depreciate like lead balloons and do not make economic sense. Regardless of the environmental benefits, economically, they are money down the drain. I'm about to prove with this 2011 Citroen C Zero with a 50-mile range battery, and the battery's now getting on for what, 10 years old, still got lots of life left in it. I'm about to prove to you what I paid for this car in 2013 and what I've sold it for now, well, just before it goes to its third owner, right after this. So a brief history lesson about this particular C Zero. So I've noted all the facts and figures here. I bought this in 2013 when it was just 2 years old. Bear in mind this is a 2011 Citroen C Zero. I bought it direct from Citroen via Mannheim Auctions in Manchester. And I paid just under £8,000 for this car in 2013. I then sold it for just over £9,000. But I'm going to talk about just trade values to give you an accurate barometer of the values of these cars, because if we start talking about retail, some sellers such as myself, we charge just £300 margin because we're passionate about EVs. Now other dealers are perhaps want £1,000, £1,500 margin, so that would skew the actual figures. So from now on I'm just going to quote trade prices. So my first customer sold in went to London, and he kept it for 4 years. Now he then sold it back to me. Basically he was paying so much for his car parking, his permit, nothing to do with running the car. He just found parking it in a London city street was too expensive, so he decided to catch and use public transport. So I bought it back, and that was in November of 2017. So I then bought this back, and then I sold it to my customer in Wales for £6,000 in 2017. That gentleman has now retired and no longer wants to drive the car. I bought it back. I've now sold it to my customer here on Orkney for £5,000 3 years later. So taking 2011, 2012 Citroen C Zeros as an example, I first saw a rise in values from about 2015, 2016 onwards, when for a 2012 example of these cars, I was paying around about £3,500 as trade purchase from manufacturers or leasing companies, right? So a 2012 C Zero, I was buying them for £3,500. Go forward 2 more years, 2017, 2018, direct from Arval, so not through the auctions, just direct with the leasing company, I had to pay £5,000 for a 2012 example of a C Zero. So there was the rise in values of around £1,500, but still for a 2012 example. So let's look at values in 2013, when I first bought this, of a comparable ICE vehicle, internal combustion engine. And I'm going to compare it to in 2013, a 2-year-old Ford Fiesta 1.2 petrol 5-door. Okay, just a run-of-the-mill entry spec. Now, fortunately, one of my trade contacts keeps his old trade glasses guide, and here, as you can see now, is an actual page from a 2013 guide on the values of a 2011 Ford Fiesta, and that comes in at, with 29,000 miles, £5,710 to the trade. That was its trade average value for a Ford Fiesta. Now today, a 2011 Ford Fiesta 1.2 petrol is worth about £2,000. So we can see how that has actually depreciated. Buying today a 2012 Citroen C Zero in the trade, as you can see from this screenshot, is around £4,600 to £5,000 in the trade. That's what the trade want, not a retailer. That's what the trade expect. There is, by my reckoning, my man maths, a £3,000 premium over a 1.2 Ford Fiesta petrol for a Citroen C Zero. A £3,000 premium because it's an electric vehicle. Now, that in my book is not depreciation. Also factor in servicing costs, clutches, exhausts, fuel, the list goes on, then immediately the EV just becomes far cheaper to drive. Now, I can almost guarantee in the comments below, and feel free to comment below, there'll be angry from Anglesey saying, "Ah, well, you can drive further in a Ford Fiesta, and if I want to drive to Cornwall right now, you can't do that in an electric vehicle." True, you'd have to stop a huge amount of times to drive this from Orkney down to Land's End. It would just take you days and a lot of inconvenience. But let's be honest, how many times are you going to drive your Ford Fiesta from John O'Groats to Land's End? I'll leave that one with you. Let's just look at the UK average journey lengths. I read this just last week. The average journey length in the UK is 19 miles a day. 19 miles. So in this 50-mile range EV, charge it up every other day. Also, at the end of the day, no one is forcing anybody to drive an electric vehicle. But again, angry from Manchester might say, well, by 2030 we're going to be forced out of our fossil fuel cars and we won't be able to buy petrol. And no, in 2030 there's going to be a ban on the sale of internal combustion engines out the showroom. Brand new cars will not be allowed to be sold in the United Kingdom from 2030. You'll still be able to buy second-hand ones, but my prediction is this: by 2030 most EVs will be the same price as a comparable petrol or, dare I say it, dirty diesel vehicle. So by 2030 you'll have the choice: do I buy, say for £3,000, a Volkswagen Golf diesel, or do I buy a 40 kilowatt hour Leaf or any of the other comparable cars that are perhaps, I don't know, where we're 7 or 8 years old, that are around the same value? No one in the right mind is going to buy something that you've got to pour expensive fossil fuel into to run. So I don't think, honestly, it will be an issue. You will want to drive an electric car by 2030 because they will be so much cheaper to buy and so much more available. So the recent rise in EV values, that's due to demand. The only reason these have gone up is that people want them. And if people want anything, if people want a certain type of washing machine, the values of them will rise because it's all a case of supply and demand. It's certainly not the trade pushing up the values of these vehicles because there's few of us around that just sell EVs. There are a number growing, but your mainstream car dealers still are not quite into electric vehicles. So the demand has driven up the values of these. Also, the range of buyers with £20,000 to spend is only so big. The amount of people with 10 is that big. The amount of people with £5,000 to spend on a vehicle is absolutely massive. So if you've got a £5,000 budget and you realise you can live with a 50-mile range car because you're only doing the UK average, which is 90 miles a day, then you are going to be really tempted to spend your £5,000 on an all-electric vehicle, which costs peanuts to run. Oh yes, Jonathan, but batteries wear out, you'll have to replace it, and the battery will cost a fortune. Yes, they will wear out. This will degrade to the point where it won't be worth running because it won't have enough range. But there are more and more specialists now replacing battery packs, such as Matt at Cleveley Motors. I'll put a link up now of Matt and James, of James and Kate, replacing battery packs in Nissan Leaf. And as we go through time, that will encompass all types of EVs. And that is a fraction of the cost what they said the EV replacement batteries were going to be, say, back in 2011. Interestingly, when this was new, this was £30,000, a ridiculous amount of money for a C Zero. But the price of lithium-ion batteries per kilowatt has come down from around £1,000 or $1,000 per kilowatt hour down to just over £100 or $100 per kilowatt hour. So the price of batteries in 2020 is now a tenth of what it was 10 years ago. So replacement batteries will become cheaper and cheaper, and of course when ones are involved in accidents, etc., they'll retrieve the battery pack, sell it on to a specialist who will then fit it into another EV. So there you go, there's the end of my little rant about EVs and their depreciating or lack of depreciation in the marketplace. It's an interesting time, it really is. Leave a comment below. Do you think I'm wrong? Well, I know I'm not wrong because I've actually got facts and figures. I've not made them up. I've got my reg stock book which lists the price I paid for this car. Say this is the third time I've seen it, and it drives just like the day I bought it in 2013. Anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to dislike, unsubscribe, don't share it. And we'll see you next time.